So SCP-3008, I'm just going to call it Infinite Ikea, okay, is basically what it sounds like. It's an Infinite Ikea. Now, there's some little trickeries to it. From what I've researched, it's essentially like a normal Ikea. People would go into the main entrance and get transported to this Ikea area that just goes on forever. And most of the people wouldn't even notice, apparently, until, they had to try to find the exit, and they fucking couldn't. It is actually stressed that this only happens if you go in through the main entrance. So if you were to try to break in through the walls or go in through any of the back doors or the garage opening or whatnot, you wouldn't actually be able to find this infinite Ikea area. You would just go through like the normal Ikea, would be, whatever. But if you go through the main entrance, and as soon as you pass a point of, I guess it's kind of like a point of no return. It's basically a point where you can't see the main entrance anymore. Then you're in the showroom. That's when it happens. So what the SCP Foundation did is they stopped all traffic going towards it. They redirected the roads, and they keep it under watch. And they're actually under order to shoot people who come out of it that aren't people. Yeah, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's actually talk about this building. So the actual place is pretty much the showroom and a couple of other places. There's a cafeteria, there's cash registers, warehouse part. It's basically an Ikea, except the doors and hallways will go on forever. It'll be like a maze, basically. And there's actually some information that would show that it's possible that this thing can like change on you. Because a lot of people can't find their way back. Apparently the SCP guys were trying to use rangefinder lasers to find the walls, and they couldn't, which means that, or I guess the lasers never, bounce back whatever they do, or I don't fucking know how it works. That means basically that it's nearly infinite, or at least it's so far that the light got dispersed, which is pretty much infinite as far as we can tell. There shouldn't really be an infinite amount of people, since there are only, like so many people on Earth right now. So even if everybody was trapped in it, that would still be a pretty finite number. The problem is that this Ikea, it's a lot of evidence to show that the universes that it contains are a lot. So maybe this means that there is this entity that just exists on all layers of reality. So there's tons of different universes it exists in, tons of people getting trapped from just, I guess, the infinite surplus of universes that there are. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. I guess it makes sense. It's a pretty big place. Like all Ikeas, there is an open and a closed period of time. So what that means is essentially the store will quote unquote close during the night, and you can tell because all the lights will turn off. So the overhead lights will turn off, and the employees will actually become a little angry, but more on them later. And you can tell it's day when they turn back on. And this is like instant. It would just instantly be night, instantly be day, and I guess it happens around closing time and opening time of your average Ikea store. There are a few exits to this place, so once you're in, as long as you don't wander too far away and it randomizes on you again, you can find your way out. And if you wander far enough, you actually might find another exit. Now, technically, there should be an infinite amount of these, because if the space is infinite, then there should be an infinite amount of these. But the actual wiki itself doesn't really hint at that. It actually makes it seem more like there's only one or so, or maybe a handful, which is kind of scary considering that in an infinite space you'd have to find them. Yeah, and they don't really have a fixed position, so you can't go to the wall of the whole place. I bet essentially what it would look like is a 4-wall area that just kind of looks like a large pillar, and there's just a door there, and then that just leads to the outside, or random reality, I guess. So SCP-3008-2, this is essentially a sub-SCP from this one that lives inside of it, or I guess exists inside of it. And essentially what they are IKEA workers for this infinite IKEA. Now their body proportions are pretty weird. They'll be really tall or really short, and their arms can be really tall or really long or really short, and those aren't mutually exclusive. So you can just have really Slenderman looking things, or like a Slenderman except the legs are like the size of a toddler and one of their arms is really thick, and it's just really abrasive to meet. They wear the traditional IKEA uniform. They got the stripes and the jeans, and they actually don't really talk to you that much. So if you were to walk up to one and you were to try to ask them, hey, where's the cafeteria, they would just keep walking. It's almost like they don't really hear you. They kind of ignore you a little bit, which is a little rude. And if you try to attack them, they will attack you back, and they're actually pretty strong. So just barehanded, they will kill you. They've killed a lot of people apparently. So during the day cycle, when the lights are on, they're pretty passive. They actually don't really make too much noise. They just kind of wander about, murmuring, kind of like villagers in Minecraft. But at nighttime, as soon as the lights are turned off, immediately they will become aggressive. So what they'll do is they'll try to shun you out of the store by murdering you. They will say phrases like, it's closing time, or the store is closed. Things that let you know that, you're not wanted. Let's also note that they don't actually have a face, so they will have like a shape general of a head, and they're all just skin. There's no nose, no eyes, no nothing. They're just skin. All right, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'll link what I actually use for most of this information in the description, but I'm just going to like paraphrase because it's written like a journal. So there's different entries, and I'm going to describe what happens in, almost all of them. So what essentially happens in this first entry is that the narrator gets stuck. They are trapped. They think it's a joke. They think they're going insane. They realize that it's a maze, and they survive their first night by basically wandering around, avoiding people. It doesn't appear that they actually meet any of the sub SCP dudes, the little workers, but they survive the night. They have some meatballs, and then they keep looking around. The second entry sheds a little more light on the actual situation they're in. So they climb a ladder. They see that it's just infinite and all around. They make a cool reference. I bet he is a huge cock. And they actually meet a first staff member. They notice that it looks really demonic and weird, and then they contemplate asking it for directions, but say fuck that, because that thing looks like it's gonna kill me. And they make an interesting discovery. He says, and I quote, "Looks like I've entered the improbably hard and pointy table section of the store," because he was looking for a bed. Now in the game this is a little different, because in the game each section lasts like 100 or so square feet, and you keep moving. This makes it seem more like there are biomes in the Infinite Ikea, and the biomes are put into little categories based on the furniture type. So you can have like a chair furniture type biome, and that will go on for some time, and then the whatever. And I'm guessing the cafeteria is the same. Pretty interesting. I guess it sheds a little more light on the way this functions. In this entry, this guy goes insane a little bit. All right, so finally he found a little more people, and this sheds a little more lore on what's actually going on here. So it looks like he was trying to run away from the creatures of the night that were trying to get him the fuck out of their store by murdering him. Obviously the best way to get somebody out of your store. And he found a town called Exchange. Apparently a bunch of people have kind of come together and started making little forts and stuff by getting furniture and making huge walls out of it and kind of sealing themselves in like small pockets of the stores. And yeah, apparently there's multiple towns and whatnot, which is pretty interesting. This entry just shed a tiny bit, the smallest flicker of light, like a spark from a lighter, onto the behavior of these SCP-3008-2s. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but he said, "Heard the staff thing slam into the gate behind me after it closed, still politely informing us that the store was now closed. They wandered off eventually." So if the gate was, I guess, mostly opaque, there's probably not too many holes in it, and they don't have a line of sight onto these guys, I'm assuming that the staff just, without a target, wandered away, which means they don't really have higher level thought. If you were just to hide like under a bed or something, I'm sure they probably wouldn't find you as long as they can't see you. Anyway, this town is called Exchange. It's called that way because the sign above it has exchange and return sign hanging right above it, like most of the towns are called. Whatever sign happens to be above it when they make it. About 50 people live there. He stays there for about a week, and then the entry ends. This next entry is a bit of an observation onto the towns. So he makes a critical claim that, wow, so many people have gone missing, why the fuck is nobody looking for us? And he also makes a behavioral check on the people that actually live there. So during the day, they know the staff are safe, they go out, look for food, and they come back during the night and, I guess, survive the night. There doesn't appear to be any recreational activities other than just surviving. My guy's a little bit of a breakdown in the beginning. He notes that one guy, Chris, has been there for years, and that, makes him a little mad. However, in this entry, he also points out that the people there aren't just sitting on their thumbs. Some people are trying to escape in different means. So, for instance, he notes that one of the towns in the distance, miles away, it appears they try to make a tower to get out of the ceiling. He also notes, and this is actually in the game, that the ceiling isn't visible. It's just kind of into the air. It's just like a gray dust. It's not there. He also notes that the staff restock sometimes during the night, the food in the shop. And makes another note that there was a phone that he tried talking into. Now this is actually really interesting, and it's the little details for me that can sell theories. So what he says is there's a telephone on the wall, so I figured I'd try it out. There was a voice on the other end, but they were just talking nonsense. Random words strung together with no real meaning. You ever see a video of someone with aphasia? Kinda sounded like that. Didn't answer me when I spoke to them anyway. Sanders says all the phones are the same here. Now what strikes me is that even though this is a phone, and he should be able to be heard by the person speaking, they don't actually respond, and they totally ignore him, which is similar to how the actual SCP-3008-2s, or the Ikea workers, act during the day. They don't answer questions, they just kind of walk around and be general bimbos. Immediately, my thought was that these people exist on a different plane somehow, and that you were able to see them, but they can't interact with you unless the lights are off, and that just sounded really complicated. So I guess I best thought that the workers don't really see any problem with the people in during the day, since they're not there for them, right? And this person on the phone is probably just a broadcast, possibly like, you know how when you're in a store and then you hear, clean up on aisle 9? Something like that, that's not really meant to be spoken or Not meant to be received and replied to, but simply just like an employee message. Anyway, if you have any theories on that, let me know. I want my comment section to be a fucking breeding ground of theories, all right? I want to be the fucking farmer, and you guys are the animals, and I want you to breed the theories in a wholesome way. And if I like it, then I will snicker at it, and you'll never know. Next entry is pretty mundane. He's just stating that the ceiling pretty much goes on forever and that there's no weather change, even though there should be some sort of, air mass moving around. Obviously, this is due to the fact that it's a creature. It's controlling the temperature in there most likely perfectly. This next entry is a little strange. So he says that the staff attacked Exchange, the town he's in, last night. Even though he's been there for a while, I feel like the staff should have attacked, but I guess this is a little special because there were so many of them. The people fought back with makeshift weapons, and he knows that they're actually not that much harder to kill than a regular person once you start really doing damage to them. This is where another supposed huge. This is another detail that could be pretty important if you're making theories, and it's pretty simple. I've already talked about it. Apparently, he's talking to one of the people while they're moving the bodies, and they say that the bodies, or the dead bodies of the employees, the staff, are actually like a honey to them. They're drawn to it, and for that reason, they actually have all the bodies in a huge pile. And he also notes that they don't rot. This next entry is pretty wholesome, and I'd like to think this is how real life would work too. I'm going to read the whole thing verbatim just because it was so wholesome. Something occurred to me. After the staff attack the other night, every time you see a situation like this on TV or in film, it's like the end of the world, or everyone is trapped on an island or whatever. Once groups like ours start to form, people always seem to turn on each other, fighting for food or dominance or whatever else. This hasn't happened here. Apparently, people from the other towns come by from time to time just to check in or occasionally to trade if they're short on something, but everything is always cordial, friendly even. Maybe it's the threat of the staff, or perhaps the constant restocking of supplies in the shops means there's nothing much to fight over. Maybe people are just better than they generally are given credit for. That's a nice thought. And I think I'll also go with that one. That's very wholesome. I guess it does make sense because, if there really is nothing to fight over, there's no point of having a hierarchy if there's only one objective, and there's no point in fighting for food if food is infinite. So this next entry describes a town called Trolleys, another town I'm guessing, getting attacked and destroyed during the night. There's only 12 survivors of over 100, so Jesus Christ, 100 people in that town. And they all came over and decided to stay with them while their town is being built or whatever. He recalls that between all of the people who came, they came up with 20 towns filled with people. I guess it just adds to the theory that, there's probably different realities that this Ikea has entrances to that, that just calls for so many people getting stuck in here over the years. Next entry is a little morbid. He basically just says that nothing really changes. The same thing happens. The night cycle will come by. The people will try to fight the staff. The staff will kill a little bit of them. Sometimes the towns will fall through. And that's pretty much it. He also notes that there's really no way to leave. They don't really have any ideas. So at the moment, they're not really looking. Now, this is super interesting. I'm going to also read it verbatim. One of those quadcopter thing, a drone, with a camera attached buzzed past Exchange today. I thought it meant that someone was finally looking for us, that help was on the way. Apparently, it's not the first time this has happened. Same thing has happened a few months ago, and everyone is still here. No idea if it saw us. It didn't stop if it did. Just kept flying until we could no longer see it. Now, there's actually a little note. Okay, this by itself isn't that interesting, but the note here is, so this is on the wiki. Based on recovery time of the journal, this entry appears to line up approximately with their first successful test piloting a drone inside the SCP. Analysis of the footage shows a walled settlement under a sign labeled Exchange and Returns. Attempts to relocate the settlement failed. Origin of previously sighted drones is unknown. So if this is their first time sending a drone there, how come he recalled, or from other people's experiences, that other drones were there? Now, this obviously plays into the infinite realities thing, so there's obviously more realities that obviously have their own Ikeas, their own people, their own SCP foundations that are all trying to go into the SCP and do the same thing. Another part of the theory is that, since they weren't able to relocate it, it could be that they got lost, but, they're the SCP Foundation. They can fucking maintain, like, a fucking pencil that when you look at it, makes your eyeballs turn into honey. I'm guessing they can also find their way around an Ikea. This goes into the theory that more so, stuff changes, nothing really stays the same. Maybe, like, big areas will stay the same for the most part, but seems like little things change enough where you can't really tell what's going on. Now, this whole thing is literally just like fucking shooting people in the head with the theory that there's infinite realities. The whole thing basically goes over the fact that he had this bright idea to talk about what they missed from home, and then after that, people started saying that they don't actually know what the Statue of Liberty is, blah, blah, the Titanic never happened. They don't really know this because it's not in their historic timeline. There's different realities that they're all from, and they all happen to be in the same place. This next one's pretty mundane. It's mostly like a checkup. He's been here for about 6 months. They noted there's actually a town with a pharmacy in it nearby, and that also the attacks of the staff has been getting worse, 3 to 4 times a week now. They said they've been trying to reinforce the walls and arm themselves better, but I mean, it's an Ikea. You have to kind of work with what you have. I'm not really sure why this note was here in this point of the wiki, since the actual entry doesn't have anything to do with more people, just more actual SCPs. So I'm guessing that this is here just to show that like they haven't seen any activity going in. So most likely what's happening is these staff are just artificially created at some random point. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point there was some entry that like a fucking worker just spawned on top of them. Another entry is pretty short. Attacks are getting bad almost every night, and so many staff that the bodies pile high enough to climb over the walls. This is the last entry. Exchange, the town pretty much fell. He talks about how the reason there were so many people is because apparently there was a small box with a little chunk of one of the staff in there. This was drawing more and more every time. Now, since this is the last one, and there's another mini story that happened after this, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that they never made it to that town. Now, there's an incident here on the wiki that says Incident 3008-1. So I'm guessing this is the first incident that happened. A human male exited SCP-3008, followed 10 seconds later by an instance of SCP-3008-2. SCP-3008-2 caught and killed a man before itself being terminated by armed response personnel. This incident represents the only time an instance of SCP-3002 has been seen exiting 3000. Holy shit, I wish they'd just call it Infinite Ikea. Man, they can't have like code names. I looked around for the autopsy log that apparently was performed on the corpse, but I just couldn't find it. So I actually don't think it exists. This might be like a they just destroyed it because it was too much information, but they couldn't destroy that little thing. So I don't really know what happened. Maybe somebody was too lazy to write it, but Infinite Ikea kind of reminds me of the backrooms. Arguably, the backrooms is itself like an SCP, and they seem to kind of behave in a similar way. Although for some reason, the SCP Foundation doesn't consider the backrooms an NCP since it's not an organism. That gives the Ikea kind of like a weird lens. Like, is this thing alive, or is it... If the building itself somehow had a conscience, then I guess it would kind of explain some things. Like, maybe the SCP-3008-2 is like a defense mechanism, like white blood cells for humans. And they try to like kill them as like a virus. And then they're also drawn to like a concentrated location of dead ones because that indicates that there's a real problem there. I also love how like I'm 100% sure that this started as like a shitpost, but I'm really happy it has lore and everything now. I don't know. I could just imagine someone, you know what? You know, it'd be cool. Fucking Infinite Ikea. That would be based. I feel like that's pretty much how it started. But yeah. Anyway, let me know if there's anything else you want to see me cover. I'm really into making my own theories and exploring other people. So even if a topic has already been covered and there's an aspect of it you would like me to go into, that's why Dio gave us comment sections. And for those of you curious about the very end of the game itself, the background that I've been using, I went in and I tried to look for the exit for like 5 in-game days, which is like 2 hours, and I literally couldn't find it. And I picked the smallest map size, and I went all along the edges, and I went all along the middle section, and then there's like this admin section that I was looking through. Like I went through the whole fucking game, and then I died in my sleep. What? Also, I've been pretty inactive on this channel because, I don't know, it's really hard starting a new YouTube channel, but one of my videos just exploded. Like, what the hell? It just fucking exploded, like, really exploded. And I have, like, twice the amount of subs I had before, which is still not that much, but, you know, whatever. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, if you guys really like it, you should drop, like, 4 comments and then, like it on, like, all your alt accounts, and then just, like, that'd be amazing. So we can try to get more, because I'd really like to put more effort into doing these and researching them and stuff. So yeah, anyway, bye.